purpose of this lesson is to learn about hyperlinks, how to create absolute hyperlinks that point to a full URL to a different website, or relative, which means that it points to a different location within your same website, images and graphics, the different image formats used for the web, vector versus raster images, compression, encoding, and how to format images using CSS. In a previous lesson, we created our Hello World document, and we created that file as index.html. And this is not actually ideal because we want our index.html file to be the main entry point to our website, the place that has all the links to all of our different pages. So what I am going to do is I'm going to rename index.html to hello_world.html. And then I want to create a new text document called index.html. So this will be my new file. Now it's going to ask me, is it okay to change the file name extension? That's going to be yes. And this is now my new index.html. Now the thing you'll notice with index.html is it is blank. So if I open it up in the text editor in Internet Explorer, both of these are blank. So I want to start adding some data to our text document here. This is our index.html file. Remember, for an HTML5 document, the first thing we need to include is a doc type declaration, which is just simply HTML. That specifies that it is HTML5. The next line is our HTML. This is an HTML document that is in a language of English. And then we have our head, which the head includes things like our page title. I'll just call it home. And it also includes our meta char set, so that way the browser knows how to interpret the characters that are contained on our page. And it also contains our body style, so our CSS elements go in here. And then we close the head. Okay, the next thing that we have is our body. And our body contains quite a bit of stuff. This is what actually displays in the browser window. And then we close our HTML. All right, so inside of our body, we need to start including certain things. From now on, we are going to use our basic HTML5 document layout. So we have a header. We have a nav section, so this is where our links are going to go. We have a body content div, so I'm going to say div id equals content. And then lastly, we have our footer. Okay, so our footer, we talked about in the last lesson that this is going to be our copyright information, so I'm going to say copyright. And then we have to use our HTML entities to be able to make the copyright symbol. So I'm going to say ampersand copy semicolon, and then the year universal dash class. And that is a paragraph, by the way, so I need to put the paragraph tags around it. And then our header is going to be just simply an H1 tag that says whatever the web page is. So this is home, and I close it. Okay, our nav section, this included a list of links, and we talked about last time that we're going to start using an unordered list to create this list of links. So I'm going to make an unordered list, and we'll close it. And inside of our unordered list, we have list items, and our list items contain links, which are anchor tags. So ahref equals, and then where do we want to go to? So I want to have a link that goes to beginning_CSS and one that goes to hello world. So I'm going to beginning css.html. And what do I actually want the text to say? And then close our A tag, and then close our LI tag. And I have one to go to hello_world.html. And close those tags. Okay, so now I have my basic page structure should look like this. So the head, home, is in its header section. Our links belong in the nav section, and they're just simply an unordered list. My body content div is blank right now, but we will be adding information there in a few minutes. And then our footer contains things like our copyright. So what I want to do is I want to clean this up just a little bit. And so this is my basic page layout, and this is what I will see from now on out in all of my documents as a bare minimum. So I want to save this. I don't want to have to type this over and over again every time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this index.html, make a copy of it, and then I'm going to call it template. And I put an exclamation point at the beginning because then Windows will force that to be at the beginning of the list. And it just makes it real easy for me that from now on when I want to make a new page, I copy this, rename it to whatever the new document name is, and I immediately have my basic template format. I don't have to keep reconstructing that every time I want to create a new document. All right, so I have my index.html file. It has links to all these other files. And the next one that we're going to create is going to be the basics of images. So I want to make a copy of our template. So right drag it, copy. And this one's going to be image_basics. Okay, so now I need to add a link to my index.html file, which is a new line item under nav. It is an anchor, which has a hypertext reference of image_basics.html. I now have a new link. When I refresh, I now see image basics, and when I click on it, I will go to the image basics page. Now, I really am in imagebasics.html, but you wouldn't know it because my title and my H1 here for the header both say home, so I need to change those. The thing is I'm currently in index.html. I don't want to modify this document. I want to switch to imagebasics.html, so I'm going to drag this over, and I want to modify the title, and I want to modify the H1. Okay, now the difference is going to be my links under image basics. Usually I don't want to link from every single page to every other page that I have. Usually what I will see is my link here is just simply going to be to the home document. So I'm going to modify my links that are here. And I want this to be a link that goes back to the home page, which our home page is index.html. And users expect to find a link that says home. So I'm going to create one that just says home. Yes, it's just one bulleted item, but we'll be able to use CSS to modify this later. I want to create a new folder on my website that will contain some files. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it subfolder, just for the purpose of you being able to see this. And my subfolder, I'm going to take my template and copy it into there. And I'm going to go into my subfolder. And the way that this works is every folder that I have will have its own index.html file. Remember, the index.html file is what is called a default document, which means that if I don't specify what document should be displayed, this is the document that the browser will present. And it's usually index.html, index.htm, default.html, default.aspx. It really just depends on what programming language you're using and the web server, but you can specify whatever document you want. But index.html is typically our default document. Okay, so I want to edit this document, and I'm going to call this subfolder document. Okay, and I want to change my links. Now, I want to have a link in here that goes back to the index.html file that is contained in my folder called Universal Class. So I'm going to change my link here to index.html, and I want this to go home. Okay, so I save this, and now I want to open up this subfolder document in Internet Explorer. Okay, so I have my subfolder document here, and if I click on home, I expect it to go from here to go up this one folder and go back to index.html. So when I click on home, you will see that absolutely nothing happens. Now, the reason for this is that by telling it to go to index.html, it's actually looking at index.html within the same folder, which is itself. Okay, so I need to tell it to go up a folder, and the way that I do that is by putting before the name of the file 2 dots and a /. And what this means is go to what's called the parent directory, so up one folder, and then /index.html. So now if I refresh this, what you'll notice is when I hover over this, it now says that the file location is c:/universal class / index.html. So when I click on it, it actually does go up a folder. Okay, so my index.html that is on my home page, I want to create a link for it to go to that subfolder. So I'm going to make a new line item, call it ahref equals. Okay, so if I just do index.html and I want to go to subfolder document, what's going to happen is when I try to go to this file, you'll notice that at the bottom there it says that the path is the same folder, index.html. I'm not going to the subfolder. So the thing is I need to specify in here to go down a folder. So to go down one folder, I just simply put a / before index.html. Okay, so now where is that located? It is located in a folder called subfolder. And I'm sorry, I don't want the first /. It's just subfolder / index.html. And then now when I refresh, now if you notice when I hover, now it will go to the subfolder index.html. And now I can go back and forth between those two documents. This is what is called relative hyperlinks. I am looking for a file that is in a location relative to where I am right now. I'm not actually trying to specify the full URL for the site, so I didn't actually state that it's at this domain name and so forth. Okay, so this is relative to where I am right now. This is how to get to the file that I want. So in this one's relative by going up a folder. All right, so I want to do an absolute link. Okay, so I want to make a link that goes to Google. Okay, now Google is not relative to my site. It is a completely separate site. Therefore, I have to use an absolute hyperlink. So the way that we do an absolute is by specifying the entire URL, including the http://www.google.com. And this would be Google. Okay, so if I go back to my home document, I now see a link for Google. And when I hover over it, you will see that at the bottom there, the little text tip that pops up is to google.com. It actually will go to the full URL. When I click on this, it will go to Google. So now what this does for me is it allows me to specify that Google is a completely separate site. So here's the full URL to get to it. That's absolute. The subfolder document, I'm not specifying the entire URL. I'm just specifying relative to where I am right now. How do I get to it? That's a relative link. Typically, when you're going to take somebody from your website and send them to another website, we don't want it to open in the same tab. What happens is when another web page opens up in the same tab, users will get lost and not come back to your site. So the way that we do this is we're going to add an attribute to the to the A tag after the URL for Google. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add what's called a target. Now, there are different targets that I can use, but a target would be something like a new blank document, I can make it open up in itself, which means open in this window, which is what it normally would do anyhow. I can also do things like open up in what's called a parent. So let's say you have a web page that gets stuck inside of a frame. Then you can force links to open up in their own window instead of being stuck inside of the frame. So I'm going to say target, and this is going to be your most common one. It's going to be underscore blank. And what this tells it is that I want this link to open up in a new blank window, which in most of our browsers nowadays will actually open up in a new tab. Okay, so the link doesn't look any different, but when I click on it, I get a new tab for Google, and now I can go back and forth between the two tabs. Now, these are not the only types of links that I can create. I can create links to do things like cause an email program to open, and even if somebody is using a cell phone, I can make it where the cell phone will automatically dial a number for me. So I'm going to make a link here that what I want it to do is I'm making a website, and my website is example.com. And what I'm trying to do is make it where when somebody clicks on a link, it will automatically open up their email client and send an email message to me. The way that we do this is we're going to use what's called a mail to link. And the mail to link is going to be mail to : and then what is the email address? So I'm going to make it as info@example.com and do something like email us. Okay, so it gets treated just like a regular URL, but in reality what it will do when I click on it, if I have an email program on my computer, like if I have Outlook, Windows Live Mail, if I'm using a Mac, any computer, any email client that's on that computer will automatically open, and it will populate the sender's email address. So I can do some other things, like I can set the subject line and so forth, but typically we just do the mail to link. All right, so the other one that I want to do, which is going to be more useful, especially with a business where you have mobile users that you want them to call you, is I'm going to make a link that this time it's going to be a TEL for telephone number. And then what is the phone number? Now, one thing that we need to keep in mind is that in the United States, we use our +1 international code, and we need to include this. So I'm going to say +1, and then my my area code is 555. My exchange is 555-1234. And typically what we'll do is we'll actually list the telephone number. That way, what happens is when people look at it on the page, they'll actually see the telephone number, but if you click on it, then it will open up the dialing application and actually populate that telephone number directly into the dialer. That way, if they're using a mobile phone and they come across our site, they want to call us, they don't have to remember the number to type it in. All they have to do is tap on it, and when they tap on that link, it'll automatically open up in the dialer, and they just have to press send to actually get to our telephone number. The next thing that I want to do is I want to add some pictures to our image basics page. We did play with an image in our original Hello World document, but I want to explain some things a little bit more fully in this video. So I'm going to start by adding an image, which my image is located in the images folder. So the source is going to be equal to images/smiley.png. And then remember, we also have to list our alt, which is the alternate text that will show up if the image doesn't load or if somebody is using a screen reader. So I'm going to say smiley. I am going to specify the width. And the width for this thing is going to be 500 pixels, which is actually bigger than the real image. And the height is also going to be 500 pixels, which once again is bigger than the real image. And then our image tag is a self-closing tag. It does not have an ending tag, so therefore we put a / and then close our brackets. And here's our smiley face. Okay, so Internet Explorer has what's called anti-aliasing feature for images. It will try to smooth out images. But one thing I want to show to you is when you take an image and you blow it up. So I'm just taking this image, and here's my typical photo editor. I'm sorry, photo viewer built into Windows. And when I zoom in, what you will see is the picture starts to get really blocky looking. This is what's called pixilation. It's P-I-X-E-L, pixilation. What this means is that our image is a bitmap image, and it's made up of a grid of pixels. And what happens is our computer knows each individual pixel and the value for the color for that pixel in a grid pattern. The problem is when we start blowing it up, we can see those pixels and they start to look bad. Now, a raster image, one like this, when I blow it up really big, so I blow it up to the size of a billboard, you will see every one of these little blocks. The thing that I want to avoid, though, is I want to get rid of those for certain things. So, like I said, in my browser, Internet Explorer will try to smooth out the image. That way, if I try to blow it up, you'll notice in here it doesn't get quite as blocky, but it does get fuzzy. And it's just because it's trying to smooth it. Not all of our browsers will do this, so we need to be concerned about that. What I want to use, if it's something that the user is going to try to blow up to a larger size, is not a raster image, but instead a vector image. Where a raster image uses a grid to make up all of the pixels that are in the picture, the vector image uses vectors, it uses arcs, and then what it does is it creates these regions by using mathematical calculations and then colors those in. So there are different utilities that you can use. If you go online, you will find services that allow you to convert a raster image to a vector image. Most of them, there is a small fee for them. But what I did is I took this image and I created a vectorized version of it. So I want to take this vectorized version and put it in my document alongside of our raster image. The file name was smiley_vectorized. So I'm going to create another image, set its source equal to images / smiley_vectorized dot, and I think it was a PNG file, so we check .png. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. My alt is going to be smiley, but this time is vectorized. My width is going to be equal to 500. My height will be equal to 500. And then it's self-closing, so / and then greater than sign. Okay, so now when I come over and refresh, I will have my two images. Now what you will notice is that my vector image does not support gradients like a regular image does. So if I zoom out just a little bit here, you'll see the eyeball for this has a gradient. So it goes from white to black. It fades from white to black. In a vector image, it does not support that. A vector image uses what's called layers. So it takes black and then it overlays the black with this dark gray, and then it overlays that with a little bit of lighter gray and so forth. Or it could be the other way. Maybe it was white in the background and it keeps overlaying the darker color grays on top of it. Think of a vinyl cutter. If I cut out sheets of vinyl and I lay one stack of vinyl on top of the next to finally make an image, that is exactly how a vector image works. And that's actually one of the purposes for a vector image, is to make vinyl cutouts. All right, so what I'll notice is that at this size, my original image looks better. But what happens with the vector image is when I blow it up, it will never lose quality. It will always retain the same quality that it had originally. And so I could blow this thing up to the size of a billboard, and because it's a mathematical calculation to create it, it will just automatically get recalculated and it will get blown up to that size and it won't change its quality. One catch to using a PNG file, these vector images, is that if I take a vector image and save it as a PNG file, Internet Explorer will automatically convert it to a raster image when it displays it, which means that even though the original graphic was a vector image that could be blown up to any size out there, when I try to zoom in and out in Internet Explorer or most of my browsers, the PNG file will act just like any of my JPEG images or any other raster image. So I do want to keep that in mind if it's going to be something where somebody's going to blow it up or decrease the size. Even though our PNG file is a vector, it still acts like a raster image. The way around that is to use what's called a scalable vectorized graphic. And what this is the actual vector file format that is supported by the web. So what I'm going to do is my one that says smiley.png, instead of this one, I have a smiley.svg. Now, SVG has been supported since 1999. It allows for things like animations. It allows for 3D modeling, things of that nature. But what you'll notice is, watch this top graphic here when I refresh the page. It now definitely looks like a vector image. You can see all of the little layers. It does not have any gradients whatsoever. Now, if I zoom in, so I'm going to zoom into the eyes, you will notice it's not losing any quality, it's just growing in size, and we can definitely see all these layers. But if I scroll down and look at my my PNG file, which is also a vector image, I can start to see the pixelation in it. So the order for quality, JPEGs will typically give you the best quality when you have gradients. PNGs will give you the best quality for blowing up to larger sizes. And then our SVGs can blow up to any size and not lose quality, but they don't start off with as good of a quality. So we want to try to use the best format that we can. Typically, when we're designing graphics for the web, we'll want to use the PNG format. These are the different types of image formats that are used for the web. We have JPEG files, which will typically have a .jpeg or .jpg file extension. These files are the best type to use for pictures that do not contain transparency. JPEG files do not support transparency. The next type are what are called Jiff files, and it has long been debated on how to pronounce the name. The creator of it actually did clarify it last year, and it is Jiff, like the peanut butter. These are the best type of graphics for large blocks of solid color. So if I make a logo or something like that, it will typically have large amounts of pixels that are side by side that are all the same color. And a GIF would be a great format for that. It usually is a small file size, and it does support transparency. GIF files are not good for pictures. They get really grainy looking. The next one is a PNG file. These are like a good balance between a JPEG and a GIF file. They're good for pictures, they're good for graphics, and they support transparency. So if I need transparency and I want to take a picture of something, then a PNG file might be a good match. The last type are what are called SVG files, or scalable vector graphics. These have full vector support, and they can be used for 3D modeling and some limited animation. One of the things that we can do whenever we get our page to load is we can cause it to load a little bit faster by reducing the number of pictures that we have on a page or the size of each picture. One of the things that we need to keep in mind is everything that is on our page has to be downloaded by every user that visits the page. So if I have a whole bunch of pictures, they have to wait for all of those pictures to download before the page is fully loaded. So there are a couple of ways I can resize my pictures. One is to physically make them smaller, and then the other one is to actually take the image and change what's called its sample rate. I can resample an image. So I have a picture of some skyscrapers here. It's a pretty good image. You can see the windows, they all look pretty clear. The sky has a good gradient here for the clouds. This is a nice image. But what I will notice is that the image is almost half a megabyte in size. So I want to make this smaller. So I'm using a program called View. It's a free program available for Windows and Linux. It allows you to manipulate graphics. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this image. And during the save options, I have a slider here about how good of a quality I want the image to be. Now 100% would save it at 100% of its original quality. And then the lower, the worse quality, but the smaller file size that I get. All right, so I want to save this image and I want to make it really small. So I'm going to make it down here, say like 10% of its original quality. And I'm going to call it Skyscrapers Resampled. And then when I resample this, this is the original one still, but if I look at the folder where it's actually contained, I will see here's my original one. It's 487 kilobytes in size. And here's the resampled one is 57 kilobytes in size. Now they're the same dimensions. They're both 1366 by 768. So that hasn't changed. This is the original image, nice and clear, nice clouds. If I look at the other image though, what I will see is now the clouds are all blocky. I can see that the windows are no longer quite as clear as they were before. I have reduced the quality of the image and also reduced the size of it. It is now 1/8 of the size that it was originally. Okay, so what I need to consider is this little bit of reduction in quality worth the significant savings in file size? And if I can live with the lower quality, then that's what I want to use. All right, so now I went extreme. I dragged the slider down to 10% of the original quality. But if I can find somewhere in between those two settings, in between 10% and 100%, I'm still going to reduce the size of my graphic, but I might find a level that is acceptable for what I am doing. The next thing that we need to talk about is what's called the web-safe color palette. This is a collection of all of the graphics that are guaranteed to be the same color on all the different browsers, on all the different platforms. And it used to be these were the colors that we had to play with. There's 216 of these colors that we can play with. And you'll notice that what the web-safe color palette is, remember our hexadecimal values, the first two values are red, the middle two are green, and the last two are blue. Well, the way that the web-safe color palette works is that both reds are the same color, both greens are the same color, and both blues are the same color. And if you do this, you end up with all of these colors. And this is the color swatch that would be used if we're using the color safe palette. Now, the thing is our current browsers don't necessarily have to use this, but it is still there for compatibility with older browsers. So whenever you design something with graphics that you need to know the colors and make sure that they're going to be consistent from one browser to the next, you can use this. The other thing we can do with this is when we save graphics, in most of our programs, we have the ability to do what's called save for the web. And when we save for the web, it will try to convert all of the colors that are contained within the graphic to colors that are on the web-safe color palette. It does two things. One, it ensures that my graphic will look good and the same on all the different browsers and different operating systems, but it will also help to reduce the file size of my picture because I can reduce the file size by reducing its resolution. I can reduce the file size by reducing its dots per inch. I can reduce the file size by changing its physical dimensions. And I can also reduce the file size by reducing the number of colors that are contained in it. In this lesson, you learned about the difference between absolute and relative hyperlinks, how to link to items that are in different folders by using the ... and / notation, the different types of graphics and images that can be used on the web, the difference between vector and raster images and when to use them, the different compression techniques, different ways to reduce the size of our files for graphics, and also the web-safe color palette.